Welcome, everyone, to Alaska Quarterly Review's Reading and Conversation series. I am Ronald Spatz, Editor-in-Chief of Alaska Quarterly Review, and this event is being recorded and will premiere on the Alaska Quarterly Review YouTube channel. Before we begin, I'd like to make a few important acknowledgments. Alaska Quarterly Review gratefully acknowledges the Anchorage Museum for hosting and providing technical support for this event, and the Center for the Narrative and Lyric Arts, Alaska Quarterly Review's 501c3 umbrella organization, which makes this event possible. I also want to make a land acknowledgement. Alaska Quarterly Review recognizes the indigenous land on which all Alaskans live. AQR is located in Anchorage, and Anchorage is Dena'ina homeland. Dena'ina is the language spoken by the traditional, present, and future caretakers of this land, and land acknowledgement opens a space with gratefulness and respect for the contributions, innovations, and contemporary perspective of indigenous peoples and marks our collective movement toward decolonization and equity. Today, we are delighted to feature short story writer Dustin M. Hoffman. Dustin Hoffman writes stories about working people. His newest story collection, Such a Good Man, is coming out soon in 2025 with the University of Wisconsin Press. He is also the author of the story collection No Good for Digging and the fiction chapbook Secrets of the Wild, both from Wild West Press. His first book, One-Hundred-Knuckled Fist, University of Nebraska Press, won the 2015 Prairie Schooner Book Award. He has published more than 100 stories in journals, including Alaska Quarterly Review, Ninth Letter, Witness, Threepenny Review, One Story, and many others. He teaches creative writing at Winthrop University. Of his stories, Anne Valente wrote, Hoffman illustrates the world of work in its intricate tools of the trade, its unseen stories of those who make and do all around us, and the hidden heartbreaks that workers both carry and witness. From the realism of the recession to the surrealism of stars falling from the sky, Hoffman's stories are filled with tenderness and humor, and above all, with heart. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome Dustin M. Hoffman.
All right. Thank you so much for that introduction, Ron, and for selecting this story and giving it a home at Alaska Quarterly Review. And then I get the double honor of getting to read this. Yeah, as Ron's intro noted, I write about working people a lot. I'm really interested in exploring both the humanity and the horror of our working world. I like the term that Studs Terkel uses in his great book, Working. He talks about us working people as the walking wounded. So in this story, I take the walking wounded to the amusement park. All right, this story is called The Tree Cutter's Ride. Donovan climbed trees every day, massive ones that poked at the sun. But the 250-foot sky tower ride pained his groin, a plunging tug on not one, but both his nuts. He ascended over the amusement park, the city, over both the Carolinas. The park was built straddling the state borders, like it couldn't make up its mind. He turned to his friend Jan to say, I'll climb the tallest tree you got, but I don't like this having no control. Jan nodded toward the acne-pocked teenager operating the ride's controls. And we're the dummies trusting this kid not to drop us. How many shits you think he gives? He said this as he held his 6-year-old son's ears. Donovan hadn't thought about freaking out Jan's kid until now, which probably made him an asshole, as much as his own dad had been. Once Jan uncupped his kid's ears, he nudged him toward the curved window. Take a look down, kid. See your whole world. Donovan kept the back of his head glued to the wall. His body tingled at the sight of his home state-made miniature, at the corpse-like lump of King's Mountain, at the endless trees Donovan could hack away if only he was steady on the ground, armed with his chainsaw. On the next sky tower rotation, the setting sun caught Charlotte's skyscrapers and glared. From here, they resembled cutter teeth on his saw chain, all lit up as if sparking like in the nightmare he had where he was buzzing off branches at work. They dropped toward his dead daddy, who was resurrected only to drunkenly stumble under Donovan's murderous branches. "How long are they going to spin us around up here?" Donovan asked. The sky tower continued rotating, and Charlotte's twinkling buildings disappeared. The roller coasters now plummeted in front of him, soulless silhouettes flailing from the cars. He'd rather fall out of a 30-foot loblolly than go on one of those. If Jan asked him, though, he might have to do it. A guy can't say no to another man's dare, can't risk looking like a pussy, and that goes double if they work together. What if Jan told the other guys? They hated Jan anyway, talked about him sneaking across the wall from Mexico to steal their jobs. He'd only started last month, and Donovan felt bad for him, which is why he'd said yes when Jan asked if he wanted to join him at Carowinds. He thought maybe Jan would be bringing his wife, but no, turned out he didn't have one. Just this kid. Just the kid and two guys, and people had already been staring at them, probably imagining who got top and who got bottom. Jan's kid was smooshing his face against the glass, and Jan yelled at him to stop licking everything all the dang time. Donovan was goddamn grateful for this 47-inch tag-along, too short for any serious roller coastering. "Kid is going to catch Ebola licking everything like that," Jan said. The kid pressed his whole body against the thin glass, and it made Donovan's insides start twirling again. He couldn't help imagining, and then couldn't stop from blurting it. If he fell out, little guy's guts would splatter 30 feet across the concrete. "What's wrong with you?" Jan said, covering his kid's ears too late. Donovan waved an apology toward the kid without risking moving his body from the seat. "Sorry, I'm just saying." "That's dumb, man. That's impossible." But people probably died all the time on these rides. Why all the seatbelts and bars and guardrails and signs warning off pregnant ladies in weak hearts? That's why his chainsaw wore a slew of stickers and had a manual warning about lifting the saw above your shoulders, about never touching the chain without pulling the spark plug, about safety glasses. When a tree cutter stopped worrying about buzzing off 3 fingers or catching a splinter through the eyeball, that's when he'd hurt himself. Fear was a protectorant. Fear kept a man's various viscera stowed in the skin casings where they belonged. He'd never witnessed a bad accident, but he had seen his crew messing with Jan's harness. Donovan had laughed along with them, all those assholes he worked with who'd tightened the harness so small it must have strangled Jan's scrotum. If he would have warned him, he might not have felt guilty enough to say yes to the amusement park. The sky tower lurched into its slow, steady descent. It was a good feeling to have the ground in your future. He even allowed himself in the last 50 feet to unstick his sweaty scalp from the wall so he could glimpse the parking lot in miniature. The ride landed and the passengers turned toward the exit. He was happy to join his fellow survivors, and he even scruffed Jan's kid's hair to celebrate the confidence recalibrated to his groin. "What next?" Jan said as they stood on the concrete, the park crowd swirling around them in currents of human traffic. "We should ride a coaster, right?" "Doubt they'll let your little guy on." Donovan cracked his knuckles. "Too bad." "Freak that, let's go check," Jan said. "What do you say, little macho man?" The kid ran ahead, and the two men had to break into a jog to keep up. He zoomed past the Dale Earnhardt coaster, the Night Hawk, the Southern Star, all of which he was too small for. "Well, what the hell can we do here?" Jan asked the teenager holding a measuring stick outside the Carolina Gold Rusher. "Maybe try Camp Snoopy?" the kid said, wincing because Jan's fists were bald, and Donovan admired that about his co-worker, his buddy, how he scared this stranger without hardly trying, his muscles flexed in neat scoops that showed through his Johnny Cash t-shirt. "We're not here for some wimpy cartoon stuff. Give us a real ride. I paid half day's work for me and my kid and my man to get in here." The kid eyed Donovan, and he wished he could explain that it was just a language flub to call a friend my man. Maybe, like, the water park might be more fun, sir, the kid said. Donovan hadn't brought swim trunks. He and Jan and his son would have to strip down to their cutoffs. 3 guys splashing each other in the wave pool, their bodies bobbing, bumping, everyone watching as Jan slapped Donovan's nude back. Or, if not the water park, maybe try a spinning ride or something? You and your family would love those, I bet, the worker kid said, and Donovan's face burned. Point me at the spinning ride, then. He smiled and punched the kid in the shoulder. So they headed in the direction of the teenager's finger, a ride called the Rock and Roller. Donovan studied the ride and was pleased to see it stayed at ground level. No lifts, no drops, just a frenzied spin, the bucket slicing the air like the teeth of his chainsaw. Fast he could handle. As they lingered in line, Donovan felt the crowd watching them again. Kids mostly, a few man-wife couples, their eyes seared. That teenager had called them a family, and anyone could have heard that. He imagined shouting to them all, "We're friends from work, just 2 dudes hanging out because he needs a friend, you know?" But that explanation jammed in his head. He revised it to leave no room for questioning. He'd shout, "I like vaginas, and so does my friend. And for good measure, he's barely my friend, just a guy I work with." Donovan realized then that he was staring at an old man's mouth, a white beard stained yellow probably by years of chain-smoking Winstons. The old man sneered, mouthed a silent bit-lip, "Fuck you." His daddy would have been that old, that angry, if another man tried staring at him. His daddy had once gotten into a shoving match with Donovan's shop teacher at a bar for being a lippy faggot. Donovan had liked that shop teacher, who trusted him to run the lathe, to run any saw he liked, said he had the sharpest eye for angles of any kid in class. Donovan had been proud, but maybe that too had been a gay thing? His daddy had kicked out 3 of the shop teacher's front teeth in the bar parking lot. The line moved, and they were ushered through a gate to pick their seats. The 3 of them popped into a single car. Jan in first, then his boy, then Donovan. Jan pulled the seatbelt, slapped it into Donovan's hand as if they were at work, prepping the mini excavator bearing its fanged bucket. The kid stayed silent as Donovan closed the door, locked it, and Jan secured the grab bar over their bodies. "Kid goes in the insides, dudes." Another ride worker stood above them, wearing opaque sunglasses and slicked black hair, his sleeves rolled like a 50s greaser. "He is inside," Donovan said. "All the way in is the rules. Just read your car." The worker kid snapped his fingers at the car's safety door, where a sticker printed with red letters indeed proclaimed, "Smaller passengers must sit on the inside." "Sure, yeah, we got it," Donovan said, because he could tell Jan was ready to make a scene again. The 3 of them reshuffled until Donovan's hips pressed against Jan's. Donovan scanned the other cars to see who was watching. He could feel the warmth of Jan's legs through their jeans. The seatbelt pressed into his thighs, threatened to slice through him. The ride started moving at a slow, loping speed. Jan's kid looked worried, and Jan looked bored. Outside their car, eyes swirled around them. Couples giggled and whispered in each other's ears. A car full of boys cackled, and young girls giggled somewhere behind them. As the ride picked up speed, Donovan spotted the stained-beard grandpa, who scowled, who stared so hard a hole felt bored through his forehead. Faster and faster, the faces blurred. Elvis Presley moaned about shoes on the speakers as Jan and his boy slid against the centrifugal force, their body weight sloshing into Donovan. By top speed, Jan was practically on top of him. He hooted and his body shrieked in joy, he hooted and his boy shrieked in joy, and Donovan reminded himself to smile. You were supposed to smile on rides. That's what normal people did. Jan's shoulder rammed into his pectorals, mashed his nipple. Their knuckles merged along the grab bar, and Donovan tucked his hand to his side but ended up sandwiching his fingers between his and Jan's thighs. The blurry stares tornadoed around, churning into a 1,000-strong whir of pale, wet eyeballs. Jan shouted, "Frick yeah!" into his ear, shouted it again, so close he could feel his hot breath, taste the funnel cake Jan had eaten. "Yeah, yeah, yeah, frickin' yeah!" Their hips squeezed together, fused, Donovan's hand trapped, touching. His jeans pulled under him, pinched at his crotch. The ride wouldn't stop whirling his body against Jan's, and everyone watched. So Donovan punched Jan in the nose. Instantly, blood sprayed. The people behind him were screaming. Jan clutched his nose, his body folding against Donovan. The ride slowed finally. Jan's kid gawked at his bleeding dad and started whimpering. Now, surely, all eyes were fixed on them. Jan's blood had speckled the white cars behind them, and the riders shouted. Donovan's legs surged with the electric desire to flee, sprint all the way home, where he'd drink himself into a stupor until work on Monday, when he'd tell the guys they'd been right not to trust Jan. But the grab bar locked him in. No escape as Jan's head lolled against Donovan's chest. "I'm sorry, man," Donovan said to the back of Jan's head. "I didn't mean to." The ride worker, still sporting the blackened shades, was rushing to unlock the bloodied passengers. He slammed up bars to free them. He moved so fast that his sunglasses fell to the ground, and he didn't even notice when he stepped on them, crunched the plastic into shards. "Fuck this," he thought, and heaved at the bar as hard as he could. Surely 8 years lugging chainsaws up tree trunks could grant him the ability to escape a kid's ride. He pushed harder and pushed so hard a fart ripped through his jeans like a gunshot. "You just fart?" Jan was finally lifting his head. "That's messed up. We're trapped here, man." The kid quieted, soothed to see his dad move. Jan lifted his head, and blood drained in fat drops from his nostril. He studied the blood on his fingers, smiled at his kid. The crowd of blood-speckled passengers ogled him. "Good news, folks," he announced. "I got the cleanest blood in the Carolinas." Someone laughed, and a din of chatter crashed the silence like a felled oak. But Donovan waited in hell for the worker kid to unlatch him, trapped hip to hip next to the man he'd just punched. If Jan would just punch him back, they could be done with the thing. Instead, Jan wiped his nose with his shirt and soaked it in the last gush of blood escaping his nose. Then he reached a blood-stained hand between Donovan and clenched his shoulder. "You could have just said you weren't into me," he said. Jan's hand pressed heavier than that blur of 1,000 eyes, heavier than a tipping tree trunk. He could smell his sickly sweet funnel cake breath again, practically taste the copper of his blood. Across the circle of cars, the greaser worker tugged at stuck bars. There were a dozen more cars before he got to theirs, and here Jan was admitting he was gay, that he'd tricked Donovan into a date. Or maybe Jan was just fucking with him about being gay. How often had all the guys at work mimed thrusting with the chainsaws at their crotches while winking at each other? Donovan performed that joke weekly. It was the same reason they'd cried wolf, screaming, "Good fucking God, I just sliced off my thumb," which made the chances of dying by blade seem silly. The greaser kid finally reached their car. He donned blue rubber gloves hastily enough to have missed a finger that flopped flaccid and broken looking. "Shit, shit, shit," he said, fumbling at the lock. "Oh shit, sorry for saying shit in front of the kid." He jerked at the bolt, and Donovan prayed to the amusement park gods to give this kid the strength of 100 workers to free him. Jan reached around Donovan and grasped the kid's floppy blue hand. "It's okay, man. No rush. I'm not dying." The bar released, giving like a sawn tree limb. Donovan hopped out of the car and had the urge to run again, but he waited for Jan and the kid to sidle out of their seat. They left the ride and made it as far as the do-si-do, its red wheel whipping above them, before Jan gave his kid a 20 and told him to buy them all a treat. The kid lumbered off slowly. Donovan would have gladly hopped on the Dale Earnhardt roller coaster to avoid being alone with Jan. It was as if the chainsaw belt had snapped, flinging its rakers and teeth into flesh. Jan patted Donovan's cheek and Donovan winced. Jan said, "Think I'm going to punch you or something?" "I deserve it. I can handle it." As Donovan said it, he heard how stupid it sounded. "We don't go places much." Jan was looking over his shoulder at his poor kid who'd never be able to enjoy a carnival ride again. "I wanted you to meet him. He doesn't know too many other good adults. No grandparents or aunts or uncles around here, just me." "He's a nice kid," Donovan said, but he was thinking about his own father, who'd hated rides. The one time he'd coaxed his drunk dad to get on the Gravitron at the local carnival that sprang up in the vacant lot near the cemetery, he'd afterward vomited into Donovan's cotton candy bag. He could still feel the weight of it bulging inside the thin plastic. But why me? Jan rubbed a knuckle against the dried streaks of blood under his nose. When you know as few guys as we know, you just want your kid around people. Kids need people, as many as you can get. One guy can cut down a big maple with root rot, but it's faster and safer if you got 5 guys on it, right? He sucked his knuckle now, and Donovan imagined the coppery taste on his tongue. Hell, at least one more to help. My kid deserves that. Donovan didn't say anything. He was thinking about how the best daddy memory he could conjure was him drunk driving Donovan to the carnival. His mother had called the cops on his daddy when she'd found out. But he never stopped being drunk. A couple years later, his daddy had ruined shop class. After the bar fight, his teacher wouldn't let Donovan near even the drop saw. If Donovan ever had kids of his own, he'd teach them how to run every kind of saw. Blades were so much safer than daddy's. Doesn't he? Doesn't what? My kid. He deserves people. He's better than a big rotten maple. Yeah, Jan, Donovan said. He's better than a maple. The kid returned and, of course, he carried a bag of cotton candy. Donovan hadn't even dared to whiff that burned sugar smell for years, and now the kid was stuffing pink fistfuls into his mouth with no pleasure, just shoveling, no smile. Jan's kid was too sincere, too stoic. In that way, Donovan supposed he was pretty similar to a big fucking maple. Sometimes you just had to prune some diseased branches or poison the pests, not topple the whole thing. Get yourself a good batch there? Jan asked. Yeah, the kid said, through a mouth gummed up with pink. It's pretty good. Jan dipped in his blood-stained hand, came up with a pink fist. His smile bit in. It's still warm, Jan said. Offer some to Donovan. The kid aimed the open bag his way. Somewhere, the old man with the stained white beard might have been watching, sickened by these men and this boy. Jan's blood from the ride would be drying into his white beard, a new stain, pink as the cotton candy. Maybe the others watched them too, the whispering, kissing couples, the kids, his co-workers spying from the treetops. Donovan reached into the bag, fingered a big fluff, tore it free. He let the cotton candy melt on his tongue. Thank you.